I'm gonna say it. You don't want to hear it, but I'm gonna say it. I don't really care for Zelda games too much. I loved Majora's Mask, but that's about it. I tried Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, The Wind Waker, Breath of the Wild, and others. While I can still see the appeal, I always just figured they weren't for me. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoy the games, but I'm not necessarily crazy about them. Shadow of the Colossus is kind of a similar game to a lot of Zeldas in a way. Both have puzzle-like bosses, a loyal steed, and the protagonist tries to save a girl while only being able to communicate with maybe one or two words and a variety of grunts. The similarities get even closer when you look specifically at Breath of the Wild with its open-world design, climbing mechanics, and bosses that are designed by some ancient being that looks somewhat similar to each other. But why do I enjoy Shadow of the Colossus more than any Zelda game, and why is it one of my favorite adventure games of all time? Well, number one, as you may know, I have awful taste, and two, well, there is no number two, but this is subjective and everyone has their own opinion, so I'll try to justify my bad opinion as much as possible with other subjective takes. But before we get into it, why am I covering the PS2 version and not the PS4 remake? Well, we have this versus, well, this. Now, that's not to say that the remake's any bad compared to the original, but I think it loses some of its aesthetic that the original had, like the washed out color scheme, and the extra jank from the glitches definitely is also a turnoff, but they're both really good and worth a shot in my opinion. Shadow of the Colossus released on October 18th, 2005 by Team Eco. You might know them from other games such as, well, Eco and The Last Guardian, but we don't really talk about that one. Both are fantastic and worth a shot as it's a short game. You could probably beat it in one sitting, so play the original on a Saturday and then play the remake on a Sunday or something. I don't know, I'm not your mom, I don't make the rules. Fair warning though, I'll lightly go over the story but not give you the nitty gritty. I hope that after 20 years of this game being out, you wouldn't really care for spoilers, but I'm sure there's one person out there that would still get mad if you gave out the ending of the Epic of Gilgamesh. The game starts off with brunette Link traversing through this world for like 5 minutes or something with a person wrapped up like a burrito in front of him. The protagonist's name is Wander, but I don't think this is explicitly stated in the game, so for all we know, his name could really be brunette Link. You arrive at a temple of some sorts and get a brief narration explaining some very vague things about the land and entities living in it. That's usually the thing with this game, though. Everything is very vague. Once Wander leaves the wrapped up person on the altar of the temple, you find out that this is probably Wander's love interest, but plot twist, she's dead. Suddenly some heavenly light in the temple is all like, hey, she looks pretty dead. If you want me to save her, go break these statues for me. But fun fact, you can't just smack these statues, you have to find each being that is associated with the statue and kill them. These beings are called colossi, colossuses, colossopodes. Anyways, your task is to kill each colossus corresponding to each statue. Only then will the statue actually break. The setup of the game is very simple and leaves a lot of questions, which is great because you don't really need a long-winded explanation to go killing things, do ya? So we're off with our cool horse named Agro to slay some monsters. I want to say Agro is one of my favorite video game companions of all time. She kind of has a mind of her own. You could press X to kick her and go a little faster, but other than that, you could slightly steer her as she will move mostly by herself. It's actually slightly surprising that the AI is not annoying and can actually traverse the environments with very little user input. Yes, she does sometimes make annoying decisions, but it's not that bad for the most part. If you can get off her and decide to go by foot, she'll stay close to you. If you decide to jump off a cliff, because it seems to be the faster way, you could call her over and she'll come sprinting the long way to come pick you up again. She's also never really in your way, which is nice. She's a pretty awesome companion. As you're riding Agro, you can use your sword to point you to the next Colossus you need to beat. You could do it on foot too, but on foot you're really slow, so it doesn't really make much sense to use it there. The light's very practical and cool. Some people kind of find it annoying that it won't guide you if you're in a dark area, but I considered it really thoughtful since, you can't really gather light in a dark area. Once you follow the first sword beam to the first boss fight, you get a brief climbing tutorial, which is simple and effective. It shows you how to grab ledges, move, climb, and jump from one place to another. Once you finish that hiking expedition, you come across your first Colossus. To defeat a Colossus, you have to climb up on it and find any weak spots, and then stab it. These stabby areas can be shown by flashing your sword light at the Colossus. Or you could just climb up on it without a second thought and find whatever spots are glowing whenever you're next to it. For instance, this first dude's weak spot is on its head, so all you have to do is stab his head violently after you climb. It's a very simple boss fight, but teaches you the fundamentals on how to take down a Colossus. Anyways, once you beat these things, wait a second, what are those black tendril things that are following?
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
Once you get impaled by those weird shadow tendrils, you're met with Wander lying unconscious back in the temple with some shadowy figures watching over him. You wake up, voice in the sky tells you about your next Colossus, and rinse and repeat 15 more times for each Colossus. Unfortunately, you can't avoid the tendrils. Trust me, I've tried. You can try dodging, going underwater, and looking away from your TV, but it gets you every time. Every time you beat a Colossus, an additional shadow shows up too. The Colossi are really where the game shines though. Each one is taken out in a unique way, and if it's your first time it might take some experimenting and a few attempts to beat them. But holy frick, I've played few games that felt as intense as when you climb up a Colossus and that music kicks in. They try to shake you off in different ways. You need to keep an eye on your stamina bar as you can't hold on to the beast anymore if you're out of it. My palms get sweaty every time I manage to grab onto a Colossus, and I don't know if that's a medical condition or what, but it's pretty intense. I love boss fights, and boy does Shadow of the Colossus feel like Boss Fight the video game. The size of these lads, their little intro cutscene, the personalities they might have like being passive or passive-aggressive, it's crazy how much they can put into one of these things with so little. I won't go over all of them because that's part of the game's magic, so instead I'll go over some of my favorites. The third Colossus is the first one in which you have to think a little harder. It has a massive sword that it tries to smack you with, and on first glance you would think, oh, I'll just climb up his sword, and that's probably what was intended. But nope, and you can't climb up from its legs like the first two Colossi. But hey, what's that hard platform rock thing over there? Maybe if I can get it to smack it. Yep, there it goes, its armor. Now you can climb up and go to its weak spots. The seventh Colossus is probably my favorite. It's like a huge sea serpent. You have to catch its attention by looking like some fish bait, and it'll come up from the water and try to shock you with its electric spikes. You have to wait for the right time to grab onto its tail, otherwise you'll just get shocked. The battle is basically go from its tail to its head and take out the electric spikes while you're at it. You have to manage both your breath and holding onto its hide, as both use up stamina. So you beat it by staying still underwater, and while you're above water, keep moving. You'll have to take out the electric appendages as you go too. You'll also have to time things very carefully as you can't stab it while it's underwater. Also, if you take too long, he'll drag you under the depths. The 10th Colossus is a sand serpent you have to fight while riding aggro. It chases you around and attempts to eat you. It is freaking fast. Make sure to keep aggro going fast as well. As it winds up its attack, shoot at its eye to make it crash. If you suck at aiming, you'll have to swerve out of the way before it chomps down on you. This fight is very exciting because of how intense and fast it is. The boss designs are all awesome too. They have a very specific looking aesthetic to them with the fur, eyes, and skeletal looking plating. But somehow they all look very distinct from each other. The different environments definitely shake things up too. Some you fight on land, some in water, others in the sky, and others in coliseums or buildings. All 16 of them have very distinct features, personalities, and homes. As you go through all of them, hey, Wander, you don't look so good. Maybe we should take you to the doctor, maybe. The further you go, the more pale and demonic Wander looks? That's very weird. I wonder why. Anyways, if you want to get the full story, no summary will do the game justice, just play it if you're interested. The aesthetic of this game is wonderful too. Everything just feels so devoid of life. Rarely you'll come across a white-tailed lizard that could boost your stamina. There's also some other lizards that could boost your HP. Also these underwater fricks that scared the cripes out of me the first time I've seen them, but that's about it. The hazy look that this game goes for definitely adds to this sort of aesthetic. The music is wonderfully orchestrated as well, and climaxes at proper times, which really adds to intensity or certain emotions and feelings. And I think I'll leave it at that. This game is an experience like no other in my eyes, and is definitely worth a shot given how short it is. Again, the remake is also great, but something about the original feels more mystifying and ominous, which really adds to the game. The storytelling was ahead of its time for a video game and still holds up great too. The boss fights are some of the best out there, and the presentation as a whole is awesome. Also, it isn't The Last Guardian.